Professor Harrington stood at the front of advanced engineering mathematics, chalk in hand, looking at the woman who just asked him to repeat the question. "I'm sorry, Professor. Could you say again? I don't understand." "Of course you don't understand, Ms." He looked at his roster with exaggerated effort. "Ramirez. Sofia Ramirez. Because you weren't paying attention again." Sofia felt every eye in the lecture hall turn to her. 28 years old, sitting in the back row, exhausted from working the overnight cleaning shift, struggling to keep up with a course taught entirely in her second language. "I was listening, Professor, but the acoustics in the back. Then perhaps you should arrive early enough to sit in the front." "Oh, wait," Professor Harrington smiled coldly. "You can't, can you? Because you're always late. Coming from your other job. What is it again? The one you listed on your financial aid application?" Sofia's face burned. "I work as a custodian. To pay for a custodian. How appropriate." Professor Harrington turned to the class. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens when universities lower their standards to meet diversity quotas. We get students who can barely speak English, who work as janitors, who don't have the preparation or the background to understand advanced engineering concepts." He wrote a complex formula on the board, pages of differential equations, vector calculus, quantum mechanical operators. "This, Miss Ramirez, is the type of mathematics that separates real engineers from people who clean their offices. This is what I've spent 30 years perfecting. This is what MIT pays me $400,000 a year to develop. This," he tapped the board with his chalk, "is something you will never, ever understand." The class was silent. Some students looked uncomfortable. Others smirked. Sofia stared at the formula on the board, her tired eyes tracking the equations. And then she saw it. The error. Small, subtle, but absolutely fatal. And she made a decision that would change everything. "Professor Harrington." Sofia stood up, her voice shaking but clear. "Your formula, line 7, the tensor notation. It's wrong." The room erupted. Before we continue, if you enjoy stories that move and transform us, tales of justice, legacy, resilience, and love, consider subscribing to Becca's Stories. We showcase the beautiful perspectives that emerge from life's changes, offering narratives of profound moral strength and unwavering character. Now, back to our story. 3 months earlier, Sofia Ramirez stood in the administrative office of Massachusetts Institute of Technology, holding her acceptance letter like it was made of gold. "This is real?" she asked the admissions counselor. "I really got in?" "Full acceptance to our evening engineering program. Congratulations, Miss Ramirez." Sofia wanted to cry. 7 years she'd been in the United States. 7 years since she'd fled Venezuela with her 5-year-old daughter Valentina, leaving behind a war-torn country and a brilliant father who died before seeing his daughter follow in his footsteps. Sofia's father, Arturo Ramirez, had been a structural engineer in Caracas, self-taught, genius-level mathematical ability. He could visualize complex 3-dimensional stress patterns in his mind, could see where buildings would fail before they were built. He tried to teach Sofia. "Mathematics isn't about memorizing formulas, mija. It's about seeing patterns, about understanding relationships in space. Close your eyes and see the numbers move." Sofia had inherited his gift, that strange ability to visualize mathematical relationships spatially, to see errors in formulas like seeing a crack in a wall. But she'd never finished her education in Venezuela. The country collapsed. Her father was killed in the violence. She'd escaped with Valentina to the U.S., worked any job she could find, restaurants, cleaning, childcare, and at night, she studied. Online courses, community college, slowly, painfully, working toward an engineering degree. Now, finally, she'd been accepted to MIT's evening program for working adults.
There's no scholarship available, the counselor said. You'll need to cover tuition yourself, $45,000 per year. Sofia's heart sank. I make $32,000 a year. I have a daughter. You can take loans, and there's a campus custodial position available, night shift, $18 an hour. That might help. So, Sofia became a student by night and a janitor by night, cleaning the very classrooms where she studied, invisible to most professors and students, just another immigrant cleaner. Until she enrolled in Professor Harrington's Advanced Engineering Mathematics course, the course that would change everything. Professor Harrington's world. Dr. Richard Harrington was a legend at MIT. 63 years old, published in every major journal, holder of 17 patents, chief researcher on a Department of Defense contract worth $10 million. That contract was for a new structural analysis algorithm, a formula that could predict building failure under extreme conditions, earthquakes, explosions, terrorist attacks. If it worked, it would revolutionize civil engineering and make Harrington even more famous than he already was. The formula was his legacy, his masterpiece. 30 years of research compressed into elegant mathematical beauty. And it was almost complete. One more semester of refinement, one more peer review, then publication and a $10 million payout. Nothing could go wrong. Certainly not some immigrant janitor who couldn't even speak proper English.
The lecture hall went dead silent after Sofia's declaration. Professor Harrington turned slowly. I beg your pardon? Line 7? The tensor notation. You have a sign error. The contraction should be negative, not positive. Miss Ramirez, you barely understand the question I ask in class. Now you're telling me a professor with 30 years of experience that my mathematics is wrong? I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but the formula, if you use it like this, will give wrong results. Buildings designed with this would fail. The class began murmuring. Some students pulled out their laptops, checking the formula. Professor Harrington's face turned red. Get out. Professor, get out of my classroom. You're embarrassing yourself. You're embarrassing this institution. You're embarrassing every immigrant who's worked hard to actually earn their place here instead of being handed diversity admissions. Sofia felt tears forming, but refused to let them fall. I'm trying to help. You're trying to make yourself look smart by tearing down your betters. It's pathetic, it's insulting, and I will not tolerate it. Harrington pointed to the door. Leave, now. And don't come back unless you're here to clean. Sofia gathered her books with shaking hands and walked out of the lecture hall. Behind her, she heard Harrington say to the class, "This is what happens when we prioritize inclusion over excellence. We get students who can't tell the difference between confidence and competence." The class laughed. Sofia stood in the hallway, holding her books, trying not to cry. She knew she was right. She could see the error as clearly as seeing her own reflection. The formula was wrong, and if Professor Harrington submitted it, people could die. But who would believe a janitor with an accent over a renowned MIT professor? Sofia didn't go back to class, but she couldn't let it go. That night, working her custodial shift, she cleaned Professor Harrington's office. On his desk were printouts of the formula, research papers, peer-reviewed drafts. She shouldn't look. It wasn't her business. But she looked anyway. And there it was. The same error, repeated throughout all his work. A subtle sign mistake in the tensor contraction that would cause the entire structural analysis to be inverted. Buildings that should be marked safe would be marked dangerous. Buildings that were dangerous would be marked safe. It was a disaster waiting to happen. Sofia pulled out her phone and photographed the papers. Then she went home and spent the entire night working through the mathematics herself. By morning, she'd confirmed it. The formula was fundamentally flawed. and in 2 weeks, Professor Harrington was scheduled to present it to the Department of Defense for final approval and the $10 million contract. Sofia tried going through proper channels. She emailed the department head. "I'm a student in Professor Harrington's class. I believe there's an error in his structural analysis formula. Could someone please review?" Response: "Professor Harrington's work has been peer-reviewed by experts in the field. If you have concerns, please address them directly with him." She tried talking to other professors. "I'm sorry, but I can't comment on a colleague's research without evidence. And frankly, you're a first-semester evening student. Professor Harrington is one of the leading minds in structural engineering." She tried talking to the graduate students who assisted Harrington. "Look, we've all checked this formula 100 times. If there was an error, we'd have found it. Maybe you just don't understand the advanced mathematics." No one would listen, because she was an immigrant, a janitor, someone who spoke with an accent. Her expertise meant nothing against Harrington's reputation. Sofia's daughter Valentina found her mother crying at the kitchen table one night. "Mama, what's wrong?" "I tried to help someone. I tried to fix a mistake, but no one believes me." "Why not?" "Because I'm nobody, mija. Because I clean floors and speak with an accent. Because the person who made the mistake is important, and I'm not." Valentina, 12 years old, looked at her mother with fierce love. "Abuelo always said you see numbers better than anyone, that you have a gift. It doesn't matter if no one listens." "Then make them listen, Mama. Like you always tell me, don't let anyone make you invisible." Sofia looked at her daughter and made a decision. If the system wouldn't listen, she'd go outside the system. Professor Harrington was presenting his formula to a packed auditorium. Department of Defense officials, MIT administration, colleagues from around the country, press covering the $10 million breakthrough. The presentation was going perfectly. Harrington explained the mathematics with practiced confidence, showed simulations, demonstrated applications. And then, during the Q&A session, Sofia Ramirez stood up from the back of the auditorium. "Professor Harrington, I have a question about line 7 of your tensor formulation." Harrington's face went pale, then red. "This Q&A is for professionals and faculty. I'm an MIT student. I have a right to ask questions." The moderator checked the attendance list. "She's correct, Professor. Please answer the question." "What is your question, Miss Ramirez?" Harrington's voice was ice. "Your tensor contraction in line 7. You have it as positive. But given the coordinate system you've defined, shouldn't it be negative? Otherwise, the stress vectors invert. The mathematics has been thoroughly peer-reviewed. With respect, I don't think it has. Because if it had been, someone would have caught this error." Sofia pulled out her laptop. "May I approach?" The moderator looked at the DoD officials, who nodded, curious. Sofia connected her laptop to the projector. "This is your formula." She displayed Harrington's work. "And this is what happens when you apply it to a real structure. I used the same test case from your paper." She ran the simulation. The building was marked safe. "Now, this is the same formula with the sign correction in line 7. She ran it again. The building was marked for structural failure. "I contacted the engineering firm that did the original testing on this building. The physical tests match my corrected formula. Your original formula would have marked this building safe when it's actually at risk of collapse." The room erupted in murmurs. One of the DoD officials stood up. "Professor Harrington, is this accurate?" Harrington stared at the screen, his face draining of color. He was running the calculations in his head, checking, rechecking, and realizing Sofia was right. There must be some mistake in the transcription. There's no mistake, Sofia said quietly. The error appears in every draft of your research going back 3 years. I have documentation. She displayed side-by-side comparisons, paper after paper, all with the same subtle error. How did no one catch this? A colleague asked. Because it's subtle. The error only becomes apparent when you visualize the stress tensors spatially. Most people check mathematics symbolically, line by line. But if you can see the physical relationships, actually visualize how the forces interact in three-dimensional space, the inversion is obvious. An MIT mathematics professor stood up. What's your background, young lady? I'm a first-semester engineering student. But my father was a structural engineer in Venezuela. He taught me to visualize mathematical relationships spatially. He could see patterns that others missed. And you inherited this ability? Yes, sir. The professor looked at Harrington. Richard, I need to see your work immediately. If this error is real, we need to halt publication and review everything. Harrington sat down heavily, his entire career crashing around him. The DoD official turned to Sofia. You said you're a first-semester student? Yes, sir. I'm in the evening program. I also work as a custodian to pay tuition. And you caught an error that professional engineers missed. I tried to report it through proper channels. No one would listen. Because you're a custodian who speaks with an accent, another student called out from the audience, one of Sofia's classmates who'd witnessed the original humiliation. The room went silent. The DoD official looked at Harrington. Professor, is it true you publicly humiliated this student in class for questioning your formula? Harrington didn't answer. I'm going to need a full investigation. The contract is suspended pending review. And Professor, the official's voice was hard. If your formula had gone into use with this error, people could have died. You might want to thank the custodian who saved your reputation.
The investigation took 2 weeks. Every line of Harrington's formula was reviewed. The error was confirmed. 3 years of research was invalidated. Professor Harrington was removed from the project, his reputation destroyed. He took early retirement rather than face the humiliation of being publicly corrected by a janitor. But the story didn't end there. MIT offered Sofia the contract to complete the formula. With proper correction, it could still work. You understand the spatial mathematics better than anyone we've seen, the department head said. We'd like to hire you as a consultant, $150,000 for 6 months of work, and a full scholarship for your remaining education. I'm a first-semester student. You're a genius who can visualize complex mathematics in ways most PhDs can't. Your father taught you well. Honor his memory by finishing what he started. Sofia accepted. For 6 months, she worked with a team of MIT professors, correcting Harrington's formula and developing it further. She attended classes during the day, no more custodial work. She brought Valentina to the lab sometimes, teaching her daughter the same visualization techniques her own father had taught her. The corrected formula worked perfectly. The DoD approved it. The $10 million contract was reinstated, with Sofia listed as lead researcher. At 28 years old, Sofia Ramirez went from janitor to published MIT researcher. The university held a special ceremony, not for Sofia's achievements, though those were celebrated, but for something more important. Professor Harrington was required, as part of his retirement agreement, to issue a public apology. He stood at a podium in the same auditorium where Sofia had corrected him. I made a grave error, not just in my mathematics, but in my judgment. I ridiculed a student for her accent, her job, her background. I told her she would never understand advanced engineering. I was wrong. Miss Ramirez saw an error I couldn't see. She saved this project. She saved lives, and she did it despite me trying to silence her. Harrington looked directly at Sofia. I'm sorry. You were right. I was wrong, and you are a better engineer than I ever was. The room applauded. Sofia stood and walked to the podium. Professor Harrington, I accept your apology, but I want to say something to everyone here. She looked at the crowd, students, faculty, administrators. My father used to tell me, intelligence has no accent. Genius isn't fluent. Brilliance doesn't need a prestigious address. He was a self-taught engineer in Venezuela who could see mathematics in ways others couldn't. He died before he could share his gift with the world, but he shared it with me. I came to this country with nothing. I worked as a janitor. I struggled with English. I didn't look like what people think an MIT student should look like. But that doesn't mean I don't belong here. That doesn't mean I can't contribute. There are millions of immigrants in this country who are told they're not good enough, that their accents make them less intelligent, that their jobs define their worth, that their backgrounds disqualify them from excellence. It's not true. Merit is merit. Intelligence is intelligence. Hard work is hard work, no matter where you're from or what language you learned first. Sofia pulled out a small photo of her father. This is Arturo Ramirez, a structural engineer who never got credit for his brilliance because he lived in the wrong country. This formula, this work, is his legacy as much as mine. And I dedicate it to every immigrant who's smarter than the system that judges them. The applause was deafening.
2 years later, Dr. Sofia Ramirez stood at the front of an MIT lecture hall, teaching advanced engineering mathematics. The same course, the same room, but everything different. Today, we're going to talk about spatial visualization in tensor calculus. Most of you have learned to solve these problems symbolically, but I want to teach you a different way, a way my father taught me. Sofia walked to the board and drew a complex three-dimensional diagram. Close your eyes. Visualize the stress vectors as lines in space. See them interacting. Watch them rotate. Mathematics isn't just about equations on paper. It's about understanding relationships in the physical world. In the back row sat a young woman, clearly nervous, clearly struggling with English, clearly exhausted from working another job. After class, the woman approached Sofia hesitantly. "Professor Ramirez, I'm sorry, my English is not good. I'm having trouble understanding the lectures. I work at night, I'm always tired. Maybe I should drop the class." "What's your name?" "Amara. I'm from Ethiopia. I came here 3 years ago." "And you're working to put yourself through school?" "Yes, I clean offices. But maybe I'm not ready for MIT. Maybe I should go back to community college." Sofia smiled. "Amara, let me tell you something. I used to clean these offices. I used to sit where you're sitting, thinking my accent made me stupid, thinking I should quit. What changed? I realized that intelligence doesn't speak English. It speaks mathematics. It speaks engineering. It speaks truth. And truth doesn't care about your accent." Sofia handed Amara a book. "This was my father's. He taught me everything about visualizing mathematics. I want you to have it. Study it, use it, and don't you dare drop this class." "But I'm struggling." "So was I. But someone once told me that the system doesn't get to decide if you're worthy. You decide, and then you prove it." Amara's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Professor. Thank you for being brave enough to try. Now go home, rest, come back next week ready to see mathematics differently. After Amara left, Sofia stood alone in the lecture hall thinking about the journey from janitor to professor, from humiliated student to respected researcher. She thought about Professor Harrington, who tried to destroy her for daring to question his work. She thought about all the people who dismissed her because of her accent, her job, her background. And she thought about her father, who died never knowing that his daughter would carry his gift to one of the most prestigious universities in the world. "I did it, Papa," she whispered to the empty room. "I made them listen. I made them see. And now I'm teaching others to see too." Her phone buzzed. A text from Valentina, now 14. "Mom, I got into the advanced math program. They said I have unusual spatial reasoning abilities. Wonder where I got that?" Sofia smiled. 3 generations of engineers. 3 generations of seeing mathematics differently. The gift continued. And this time, the world was listening.
An arrogant professor mocked an immigrant student for her English, humiliated her publicly, told her she was too stupid, too unprepared, too foreign to understand advanced mathematics. He was wrong. Sofia Ramirez saw an error in a $10 million formula that had been peer-reviewed by experts, an error that would have caused buildings to fail, an error that could have killed people. She saw it because she had a gift, the ability to visualize complex mathematics spatially, inherited from her brilliant father, who'd never gotten recognition because he lived in the wrong country. And when the system wouldn't listen, when proper channels failed, when her accent and her job as a janitor disqualified her voice, she persisted anyway. She stood up in a room full of officials and experts and proved she was right. Not through privilege, not through connections, through pure merit, through intelligence, through courage. And in doing so, she exposed the fundamental lie that elitism tells, that your worth is determined by your accent, your address, your pedigree. It's not. Your worth is determined by your work, your integrity, your willingness to speak truth even when the powerful don't want to hear it. Sofia Ramirez was told she would never understand advanced engineering. Today, she teaches it at MIT. She was told her accent made her stupid. Today, she's published in journals worldwide. She was told that janitors don't belong in elite institutions. Today, she's leading research that will save thousands of lives. This is what merit looks like when you give it a chance. This is what happens when you judge people by their minds instead of their circumstances. This is why immigration isn't about lowering standards. It's about recognizing that genius exists everywhere, speaks every language, and doesn't need permission from the elite to be brilliant. So the next time someone tells you that immigrants are taking opportunities from more qualified people, remember Sofia Ramirez. Remember that the janitor might be smarter than the professor. Remember that intelligence has no accent. And remember that the people we dismiss as unqualified might be the ones who save us all.
Thank you for watching this story. If it moved you, leave a heart in the comments and share what you thought. Let us know what themes or stories you'd like to hear next. We love creating narratives that resonate with you. Subscribe to Becca's Stories for more tales of justice, legacy, resilience, and love. We showcase the beautiful perspectives that emerge from life's changes, offering narratives of profound moral strength and unwavering character. And remember, intelligence speaks every language, genius has no accent, and merit always wins, if you're brave enough to prove it. See you in the next story.